Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. On behalf of the International Bipolar Foundation, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Dr. Ruth White, who will be sharing with us her SNAP plan, Sleep, Nutrition, Activity, and People, which uses scientifically based strategies that address 4 key factors that influence bipolar symptoms. Using this plan, people with bipolar disorder learn to develop good sleep hygiene, eat a diet that promotes mental health, implement a plan for physical activity, and learn to create and maintain healthy and supportive interpersonal relationships. These strategies, which reduce the frequency, intensity, and length of bipolar symptoms, and tools to support their implementation, are the focus of her new book, Preventing Bipolar Relapse. She is also the lead author of Bipolar 101 and is currently writing a book on mental well-being for a general audience. Dr. White is Clinical Associate Professor in the School of Social Work at the University of Southern California. Welcome, Dr. White.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about being able to participate in your very popular webinar series. And for the next 45 minutes or so, what I plan to do is talk about what the program is about. And I think many people will be familiar with some aspects of it just from knowing they're about bipolar disorder. And just for me, it came out of my own research on the illness because I have bipolar disorder. And so while I was researching for my bipolar blog, I kept coming across research that had the same topics they would talk about. No matter what the point was, they would always track people's sleep, etc. And so these were key factors that I kept seeing over and over. And so I decided to put them together. And, the first 3, the sleep, nutrition, and exercise bit, are actually used as a focus in a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy, as well as in peer interventions across the country. And I just happened to have been on a walk one day, and the letters came to me. And at first I thought, oh, this is great. It actually spells something. But SNAP didn't come first. It was the letters. And so I'll get started. And as I go along, if people have questions, save them for the end, because it's a very bare bones presentation, and there's a lot of information that could have been included that just for the purposes of time could not be included here. So the 4 simple steps, and I want to emphasize that they are simple but not necessarily easy. And I remember thinking about what to put, like 4 steps, 4 easy. I said, these are not easy steps. So the S stands for sleep, which is really about having good sleep hygiene, good practices regarding sleep. The N is for nutrition and looking at foods that have a direct impact on the brain, at least what we know so far, regular healthy meals, and supplements that have been found to be helpful in mood regulation. The A is for activity, and in writing the book, I wanted to write about lots of different activities, and then I realized I had to focus, and so I focused on routine physical exercise just because it's the most powerful and most researched. You could look at playing chess or something, but that has not been studied in the same way that exercise has been with regard to mood. And then there's people. And for many people who are listening, support groups are often very important to people. And in cancer research, for example, we know that people who have been part of a support group actually live longer. And all the happiness studies that have been done over the last decade with this obsession on happiness, the researchers have found that your interpersonal relationships are really the key to happiness. In fact, somebody, knowing I was going to be doing this presentation today, sent to me a new article, I think in Science Weekly, that had to do with the fact that if you have what they call difficult relationships with your family, hostile relationships with family and friends, you actually die earlier. So I thought, well, it's not just keeping you a happy mood, but it's actually making you live longer. So these steps are really a holistic approach to bipolar disorder. They're not to replace medication. Um, I didn't really want to cover medication in this presentation because that's a very complex issue, but to understand that the way that I approach this is if you do these four things, you might be able to reduce the pill burden, so the number of pills you take, or your dose burden, the amount of medication that you take, um, because you would have done actions and behaviors that actually ameliorate symptoms so that the need for medication may be less. I know in my life that has definitely worked. So my process is that you start here and then medicate the rest. And I won't really own this part. This was really from a psychiatrist that I had in Seattle, and she really was a doctor who was not a fan of medication, which is a very unusual psychiatrist, I must say. And she really believed in making lifestyle changes that would make me healthier and keep me more regular and keep me out of her office. And so a lot of the approaches, for example, nutrition, she was very early on the bandwagon for omega-3s. And at the time, I remember she said, it's new breaking science. They're not sure how it works. They're not sure if it really works. But she said, fish oil can't hurt you, so you may as well take it. And now it's standard science to know that omega-3s found in cold water fish or in certain kinds of nuts and seeds are um, very good for mood regulation. So it's a lifestyle of good habits that you want to develop so that they're not work, they're just what you do every day. It's a multi-pronged approach, which means, some people sleep well, so they don't have to work on sleep, but maybe they need to work on nutrition because they're not doing the right things food-wise, or perhaps everything is going great in their interpersonal relationships, but they don't have a routine physical exercise program. So it doesn't mean it's not a program that needs all components to be worked on at the same time. These are just the four factors that science has found to influence brain functioning and in particular to regulate mood. So it's a system that you can use one piece by itself or all of it at once. There's also to note that there is the importance of tracking and monitoring these things as part of the steps that, again, we don't have a lot of time to spend on that, but to know that there are tools in the book and tools online, and at the end you will see where you can find the tools online that help track and monitor sleep and food and physical exercise in particular. Because it's been found that if you know what you're doing, it's easier to know what to fix and how to fix it. So, I will be talking about ways in which people can monitor these four factors that influence brain functioning. So let's start with sleep. I call it the power of Z's. And I start with sleep because it has been shown to be such a powerful factor in brain functioning in general. So for everyone, sleep is an issue. Turns out that more car accidents are caused by sleep than alcohol. Um, People make mistakes on the job that influence the safety of workplaces. And if anybody remembers many years ago when they changed the shift requirements for interns because they realized that with sleep deprivation, it's not that they couldn't function, but they weren't functioning optimally. So they were making mistakes that might have gotten caught later on, but there were mistakes that could cause death because of the nature of their job. So it's very clear the research is, there's no doubt that sleep really matters for everyone. And sleep really matters, therefore, for people who have issues with brain functioning. Um, so it is the most important factor of all the four. And so, why does sleep matter? Well, first, sleep empowers the immune system and supports organ function. And I would say that everybody would know what it's like when they're not sleeping, that they're more likely to have illnesses and to catch a cold when we're working really hard. Um, and in terms of organ function, sleep makes our organs take a rest and so that they function better in the morning. Um, it also sharpens our brains. So we know that if you give people tasks to do and you deprive them of sleep, then they will not be able to do those tasks as quickly or as accurately as you would want them to do. And with specific regards to bipolar disorder, good sleep lowers the risk of depression. And there's lots of research, but I just picked, one as whatever the most recent one was. And there, just to note that there's a list of the references at the end of this presentation. I just didn't want them to fill up the page so that people can find this information on their own. It also lowers the risk of mania, and it actually helps keep you fit. So any athlete knows that it's really hard to function if you are not well slept. So what is good sleep? So there are certain factors that make you know if you have slept well. And the first is being tired at bedtime. So what often happens for a lot of people, especially people living with bipolar disorder, sleep is often this issue that they're often struggling with. And part of it is they're awake, especially if they're in a manic or hypomanic state. They're not necessarily tired at bedtime, which means that you then have to induce tiredness in some way, shape, or form. That you fall asleep within 30 minutes. So it does take a while for our bodies to wind down. If you're lying in bed an hour and a half later after you've gotten to bed, then that is not good sleep. That you stay asleep. So, for example, if you drink, what often happens is that people fall asleep, but they tend to wake during the night. So, staying asleep for 6 to 8 hours. And there's a range of hours there because um, studies have found that some people do need less and some people do need more. So there are actually people who do need 9 hours, but they tend to be more out on, as we would say in statistics, on the tails of the curve. So most people need 6 to 8 hours of sleep. And then you want to wake up feeling rested. If you have gone to bed on time, excuse me, and you stay asleep, you should wake up feeling rested. That's the whole point of sleep, is rejuvenation. So if you wake up and you're not feeling rested, then you're not getting good sleep. So sleep works as a symptom and a trigger in bipolar disorder. So sleep is a symptom of mania or depression. So some people won't be able to sleep or will have insomnia as part of their manic symptoms. For some people, it is also part of their depression symptoms, even though they might be stuck in bed, they just can't sleep. And then if you don't get enough sleep, it can trigger manic or depressive episodes. So that sleep becomes this one factor that, if you monitor it well, can often predict the oncoming of a bipolar episode. And so you might be able to intervene to keep it at bay by getting your sleep back in order. Sometimes, of course, we need help doing this. A lot of people with bipolar disorder need sleep aids in order to fall asleep at night and stay asleep. And some people would rather use other methods to fall asleep, but a lot of doctors will medicate sleep as I say, up front before anything else if you present to them, because of the importance of sleep in mania and depression, especially in mania. If people go a day or two without sleep, their manic symptoms actually escalate. So what happens in the absence of sleep? Now, there are two different types of absence of sleep, and one is insomnia, which is given the opportunity. So you have the time to fall asleep, you have the place to go to sleep, and you're unable to sleep adequately, which means you don't meet those criteria for good sleep. Either you're not tired at bedtime, or it's taking you a long time to get to sleep, and then when you get to sleep, you're waking in the middle of the night, and maybe you're sleeping for less hours than you want. You can't help but get up early, or you're going to bed really late at night, and you might not wake up feeling rested. And of course, if you're waking up in the middle of the night, you might not. So sleep deficit, however, is the inability to sleep adequately due to external limits. What that means is perhaps you have two jobs, and if you have the two jobs plus what you have to do at home, you just don't have enough time to fall asleep. Or you may live near a construction site, and it's just hard for you to stay asleep or fall asleep because of the noise. So it's usually about what is outside of you and not what's inside. So insomnia, some of the symptoms are daytime sleepiness. So you haven't slept well at night, and your body says, I still need to sleep, so people get drowsy in the daytime. And what do we do in America? We go out and we get a cup of coffee, which in the morning is fine, but studies have shown that drinking coffee in the afternoon often interferes with sleep at night. And that applies to whether or not you have bipolar disorder or not. And in doing the research for my next book, which is, again, came out of the same research about brain functioning, and I've just applied. In fact, this was supposed to be a general audience book, and it turned out that the publishers asked me if I would write this book for bipolar disorder instead when I pitched it to them as a general audience book. So the same factors apply to people who don't have bipolar disorder, but it is particularly important for people who do have bipolar disorder. Another sign of insomnia is that you're not able to think clearly. So people often make mistakes when they're writing. You have short memory. You can't remember where the keys are, where you parked your car, or that you had an important meeting in the morning, or you just can't find the words. You're trying to make sentences, but you can't find the words. As a professor, I often notice that if I haven't slept well, simple concepts that I've been teaching for years sometimes escape me. And like anybody who has a child knows, extreme mood changes or irritability happen when we haven't slept. And I always say little kids just don't know how to regulate that feeling, but adults often feel the same way the kid does. They're just able to control it better. So you get really cranky when a lot of us haven't slept. And for some people, this is a lot worse than for others. So for some people, the irritability may be part of a hypomanic state or part of a mixed state in bipolar disorder. So the irritability can actually be a symptom of an episode, or for you to understand that maybe an episode is coming on. Of course, if you are sleepy and tired, you are likely to not have a lot of energy or motivation. And so doing the things that you'd normally be doing in the day, you might not necessarily get them done just because you just don't have the effort. So you are putting effort into the things that you have to do, things like the dishes, cleaning the house, getting the car done, or answering emails at work. You might just not be inspired to do. And then there's a poor performance at school or work. And what we know in a general audience is that, for example, adolescents who don't have enough sleep tend to function poorly at school. So do little kids. And then there are what people call somatic impacts of sleep, so that you have a headache or a stomach ache, which is related directly to sleep and not necessarily part of another illness, so that the stomach ache is not a sign of any problem with your stomach in particular, but is a symptom of the lack of sleep. So how do sleep patterns work? Well, again, people were looking at circadian rhythms for many, many years, and I guess it got legitimacy when the National Institute of General Medical Sciences actually has a page, and it's part of the National Institutes of Health. And there's actually a web page that focuses on circadian rhythms. That's a new addition to their mental health web page. So I said, oh, it's now finally got legitimacy within the mental health field to think about circadian rhythms. And circadian rhythms are really about the natural cycle of dark and light over 24 hours. And all living creatures have a circadian rhythm. Some of you might have plants that flower only in the morning and then they die in the evening, or they bloom only in the evening. So there's always internal biological clock that is going, and that triggers certain things. For example, hunger in the morning, and we go to bed at night, we sleep all night, we don't wake up to eat in the middle of the night. So the darkness creates a certain behavior internally. And there's also external factors. For example, if you live in Norway or Alaska and you have to deal with a lot of darkness, people often find their sleep patterns are not as healthy as they could be, because the less light we have, the more melatonin is created. And melatonin controls our sleepiness. And some people already use melatonin as a sleep aid, whether or not you have bipolar disorder. Some people with bipolar disorder prefer to use melatonin over other pharmaceutical sleep medications. A lot of people who travel a lot use melatonin to regulate their sleep so that they have less jet lag. So melatonin is well known as an aid for sleep. And then there are physical, behavioral, and mental changes that happen. So we cool down and our behavior slows down in the evening, and sunlight creates different feelings in us. And most of us like to be out in the sun. It feels good to be out in the sun, and it turns out there are actual emotional, psychological benefits to being outside and to being in nature. So getting sunlight is really important. My doctor in Seattle, it used to be one of the first things she said, have you gone out in the sun today? Because it does influence mood. So how do you get the sleep you want? So one of the things you have to do, the focus is that you want to go to sleep and you want to stay asleep. And you want to stay asleep for as much as it takes for you to feel rested in the morning. And notice here I have 7 to 9 hours, and before I had 6 to 8. But the numbers are really about how you feel in the morning when you wake up. If you feel rested, then you're getting a good amount of sleep. If you need an alarm to wake you and you're pressing snooze 4 or 5 times or 2 or 3 times because you still feel really tired, then perhaps you need to go to bed earlier at the night before so that you do feel rested. And one of the ways to know if you're getting enough sleep are sleep logs. And there are sleep logs on the website connected to the book. There are also sleep logs available from many different organizations that you can find online. And I always say people should just find the sleep log that works for them, that monitors how much time they sleep, when they fall asleep, what were some of the, are they drinking tea before they go to bed? Are they doing yoga? Whatever it is. People also, a lot of women find that their sleep is changes over their menstrual cycle. So knowing these things, you will find out if you log your sleep, you will find the association between certain factors and how much sleep you get. When it comes to caffeine, nicotine, and alcohol, the less the better with regard to sleep. Caffeine, as anybody knows, keeps you awake. So, of course, if you drink a lot of caffeine, you will stay awake. In my case, I remember because a lot of times people with bipolar disorder have side effects related to medications that make them sleepy. So then they get in a routine of drinking a lot of caffeine, and caffeine can actually make you feel as if you're having an anxiety attack at the end of the day. If you've had 4 or 5 cups of coffee, it's going to be really hard for you to sleep. And so there needs to be a discussion often with a doctor if you have a job that you have to go to, but at the same time you're taking something like lithium that makes you sleepy, and the only way you're going to function is with caffeine. You might need to talk to your doctor about maybe taking them all at night instead of taking them throughout the day. Nicotine has been known to keep people awake as well. So for people who smoke, people often get sleepy. They go out, they smoke a cigarette, and they feel more energized and ready to go. So it has a similar effect on sleep as caffeine. Alcohol will, we know that if you get drunk, you're going to pass out and fall asleep. The issue, though, is that you don't stay asleep, and it's not good quality REM sleep. So having alcohol near bedtime for some people will be a major issue, and less so for others. There also needs to be the consideration of the interaction between alcohol and medications for bipolar disorder. So alcohol is often contraindicated, and what that means is that it will say not to mix the medication with alcohol. And it's really important to follow that because it will influence the impacts of the drug on your system, as well as the ability for you to fall asleep. So setting the stage to fall asleep is really important. So one of the things that often happens is that people, watch TV or they're really busy, and then they just put on their bedclothes and expect that they're going to fall asleep. And for a lot of people, that your body is just not ready to fall asleep. So having a nighttime routine that calms you down, slows you down, if you're doing it at the same time every day, your body just gets used to, it's 9 o'clock. My body is getting tired because at 9 o'clock, that's what happens. So you can schedule your routine activities. I often tell people with bipolar disorder to take between 30 minutes to an hour for the routine, whether it's to start with having a cup of tea that's calming, like chamomile or mint. Somebody might want to read a book. They often say in the research not to watch, say, shows that are create excitement because it's not going to make you sleep very well. Some people, if you're watching a police show or something like that, it's creating your heart rate to go up. So what you want before sleep is for your heart rate to go down. For some people, mindfulness practices help with that. You might have yoga practice, you might stretch, you might do meditation, and you might have a particular routine that you keep in the same order all the time. So at some point you're going to take your meds. If you are on medications, they might take an hour or so to kick in. If you know that the medication kicks in right away, you might want to leave that to the last part of your routine. For example, there's a big difference between taking Ambien for sleep and taking Klonopin for sleep. Ambien tends to work within the 15 minutes. Klonopin might take longer. So you definitely want to brush your teeth and everything else and take your Ambien right before you get into bed, because you might not be able to function otherwise. So you want to find a way of calming your body down. The environment. A cool, dark room really helps us sleep. So having the interference of light. So for example, there are things like turning your phone over so that the radiant light that comes from the screen is not there to intervene. Having really dark curtains to draw to keep the light out even in the morning, especially in the summer when the sun comes up really early. Our bodies, again, because of circadian rhythms, are attuned to the cycle of light and dark. So if you're falling asleep and everything's great, but the sun's coming up at 5 o'clock in the morning, your body might just wake up with the sun. So you want to keep the curtains dark so that the sun doesn't interfere with your sleep. You also don't want distractions. So you don't want to fall asleep with the TV on, or fall asleep with the radio on. Having certain kinds of conversations are not really good before bed. And if you have worries, because a lot of people, you're thinking about the next day. For example, last night, I was really concerned about being prepared for this webinar. So I knew that I would have to start winding down early so that my excitement did not get in the way. Nutrition. So the bottom line for the end part of the SNOP program is that the more nutrients you have in your body, the higher your level of functioning. And that is both brain functioning and all other organs. So we know that a healthy diet is really important for brain functioning, physical health, and it also works on brain health because anybody who's been hungry knows that being hungry puts you not necessarily in the best of moods. As with everything else with bipolar disorder, regularity is really important. It is really important for there to be a routine so that your body eventually, over time of creating good habits, just gets in the routine of being hungry at the same time, being asleep at the same time, so that with body regulation comes mood regulation as well. So what you want is definitely to have regular meal times and to have healthy meals when you eat. And this includes whole foods. What that means is the closer they are to what they look like in nature is the best. So the less processed food is really important because processing takes out nutrients out of food and sometimes adds nutrients we don't want too much of, including, for example, salt and sugar that influence, that can trigger things like diabetes, especially, again, people with bipolar disorder often take medications that influence the way their body metabolizes certain nutrients. Sunlight is vitamin D. Vitamin D's improve mood. We know that places like Seattle, where they have less sun because of all the precipitation, have high suicide rates. And in a place like Seattle, the public health department has made vitamin D a public health issue so that people will be sent out to be in the sun, and that will influence their mood. There's also certain kinds of food which which influences brain function, and so there's mood foods, things like blueberries make your mood better. Omega-3 vitamins improves mood and stabilize mood. So does vitamin E. L-tryptophan, which is found in milk, and this is often why people say take warm milk before you go to bed at night. That is one way of falling asleep because it actually evens you out. And again, monitoring, you want to have food logs or meal plans because you're providing structure for the behaviors that you want to practice. And so writing down what you eat and when you eat it and the mood in which you were when you ate it helps you to understand the role of food in your life. Some people eat when they're sad, other people eat when they're happy, other people just eat whatever mood they're in. So knowing these triggers for eating and for how food makes you feel will help you be able to monitor and to change your food habits so that they're more healthy. Meal plans, anybody who's ever been on a diet or gone to Weight Watchers or any of the systematic weight loss programs are familiar with meal plans. And the reason you plan your meals is that you can then control the food that you are eating, and you can bring your lunch, you can prepare and think ahead for what your nutritional intake is. And then we move to A, which is activity. And then for this program, it's physical activity. And the point is to move to feel good. So the first point here is not about physical activity, this first bullet, which is about feeding your passion. So if you like to knit or crochet, or you like skiing or kayaking or writing or making jewelry, whatever it is, if it makes you happy keeps you interested and is pleasant and relaxing, it is going to be good for your mood. So activities other than physical activities can also influence your brain function and your mood. The physically active lifestyle, I'm not going to say that. I think everybody in America knows that you should exercise because of its health benefits. So it protects against heart attack, hypertension, stroke, diabetes, obesity, dementia, and breast and colon cancers. And this is just, there are other things that are actually impacted. And so um, focusing on getting 30 minutes of moderate intensity physical exercise on most, if not all days. This is a recommendation from the Department of Health and Human Services, that this will keep you at a certain level of fitness. Now, if you're really into it, you can swim for an hour, go marathon running, whatever it is that makes you feel good physically. And you want to encourage and support your new behavior. And so I do highly recommend exercise buddies. A lot of people run together or work out together, and it's just a way of providing social support for good behaviors. And exercise works. There's some complicated routines, but they're also just the simple fact that exercise increases your endorphins. Endorphins is a good feeling in your brain, and so exercise becomes a mood booster, sorry. And it also can fight the negative side effects of medication. A lot of the psychotropic medications that people with bipolar disorder have to take have side effects that can trigger diabetes, for example. For some people, a rare effect of lithium that I had, which was very interesting, was just a really low heart rate and almost got a pacemaker. And within coming off lithium, within 2 days, my heart rate went from 32 to 73, which was normal. So, but I felt no symptoms, but exercise kept my heart, going. And at the same time as well, it prevents things like obesity, which often a lot of psychotropic medications, again, that we take for bipolar disorder, in, have a side effect of weight gain. And exercise is one way to fight that. And the last is people. Relationships matter. So we know that song, No Man is an Island, or that phrase. So people need other people. And there's a real power to healthy interpersonal relationships, especially for people with bipolar disorder. When you're trying to deal with symptoms or looking for support in reducing symptoms and preventing symptoms, having social support is really important. You want to be able to have a mutually beneficial relationship. For it to be healthy, you don't want it to be one directional. You want to be able to trust the people in your life, and you want to have open communication, open and honest communication with people in your life. So, there's that term toxic relationships because conflictual relationships create stress, and what you're trying to do in maintaining a healthy mood is stress is bad for mood. We know this, that stress is bad for you. It was on the Sunday New York Times magazine actually had a whole article on burnout and the impact of stress at work and working without breaks and all this, and how it impacts your emotional state. And that's just for everybody. And so if you add a mood disorder to that, you can understand the impact that stress would have. So the having interpersonal relationships that are supportive are a way of mediating the negative impacts of the world around you on you as a person. So the types of support you often want from people are emotional support. You're upset, or you're happy and you just want to share that. Material support means, somebody might help you out with different things like cleaning your house or getting your laundry done, whatever it is that, if there are certain chores that you find you're not getting done and it's really frustrating to you and interfering with your mental health, you might want to, what I call, outsource it. You might want treatment support, somebody to go with you to appointments or help you take you to appointments, drive you to appointments. For some people, they might need financial support because disability payments might not be enough, or they might lose a job because of bipolar disorder and need help in that area. Having employer support is controversial because some people don't believe you should tell your employer. Other people believe that you should tell your employer and get the support you need to create a work environment in which that is supportive to your mental health. So whether it's flexibility in time, the ability to work from home, for example, if you're feeling depressed and you feeling a depressive episode coming on and you know that there's stressors at work, you might want to be able to take a day off as a mental health day. So, even people without bipolar disorder want mental health days. And then there's crisis support. If you find yourself in the position where you are having an episode or you feel an episode coming on and you want to intervene as soon as possible so that you don't have a full-blown episode or you're cutting this episode short, you want to have places that you can go for crisis support. And all these different types of support you might get from one person like your spouse, or you might get from a range of different people. So your crisis support might be your mental health provider and not necessarily someone at home. And I put connect, tell, share, ask, give. And connecting is the first part. You don't want to isolate yourself. Isolation, as we know, when they do what I call psychological postmortems on people with mental health issues that, end up in the press for one reason or another, one of the things that is always there is isolation. So connecting to other people actually makes us feel good. I was reading a recent study that said that even speaking with strangers actually is a bigger boost to us than speaking with the people that are close to us, which I found very fascinating. So if you go down the street and say hello to the person at the coffee shop, or you say hello to the bus driver or whatever, connecting with human beings is actually good for us. Being able to tell people about your bipolar disorder, that you have it, so that they understand sometimes behaviors that might be problematic, they can put it in context. Sharing means sharing that maybe you're at risk for an episode, you're feeling stress, etc. Sharing with other people relieves the burden, and so actually reduces your stress, calms you down, gets your mood back in order. Asking for support, and sometimes for a lot of people, asking for help is not something they want to do, and because people want to feel as if they are that they're able to, in America, that we're able to do things by ourselves. And at a point where you're either thinking that an episode is coming on or an episode is in progress, you want to ask for the help that will get you through that episode so that it's as short as possible and causing less damage to your life. So asking for help is really important. And of course, you're not going to ask your child for help with your mental health issue, but you might ask them to, clean the house because you're feeling like overwhelmed. And so also know that you have to give back. So, having bipolar disorder doesn't mean that you always need to be the one receiving. You also want to give support to other people. And everybody who's ever volunteered or helped somebody knows that it feels good to help other people. So you want that mutuality in your relationships. So we're coming to the end, and what I'm going to do now is just summarize what I've talked about so far, and then we can open it up for questions. So I've covered all the aspects of the SNAP program. So you want to get good sleep hygiene, that's the S for sleep, and part of that is to minimize your caffeine, nicotine, and alcohol intake. And there are lots of other things I could have put on there for that other S, but I think that is one place that people don't consider how much of an impact it has on their sleep behaviors. And because coffee is such a routine in so many people's lives, and we know that because there are cafes everywhere that are actually making money. So we are drinking a lot of coffee. And so having coffee as in the morning is fine, but after that, then it is not necessarily the best thing you want to have in the afternoon. So often coffee in the morning is fine, but coffee in the afternoon will interact with sleep behaviors. Nicotine, well, it's not good for you anyway, so I always say this is the easy one. You should want to quit smoking because of the bad influences it has on your health anyway, but it also influences mental health. We've talked about the impact of alcohol, both as it interacts with medications, as well as how it impacts sleep. Regular healthy meals is just something everyone should do, but it's more important for people with bipolar disorder to really focus on the regularity of those meals and to make sure that they're getting nutrition. Sometimes people, when you're depressed, I often say one of the things that keeps us in bed when you're depressed is the fact that you're not eating any food. So if you have no energy, it just exacerbates the lethargy that comes along with depression. And there are certain supplements that have been shown to improve mood, and those are omega-3, vitamin D, and vitamin B. Having regular exercise as well is, we've talked about that. You want it to be routine. You wanted it to be part of your life. You want to stay connected with people who care and understand your bipolar disorder and are supportive in that. And then in the end, you want to seek and follow professional help as necessary. It's really hard to fix this on your own, and to have professional help to support and guide you, especially when it comes to things like an exercise routine or diet. You want to talk to your medical practitioner about your own particular nutritional needs, whether you have hypertension that requires less salt, or you have a high cholesterol problem that requires less fat. And same thing with exercise. You want to make sure that you're in good health so that you can carry out an exercise program. So I want those things to be clear, that the professional help is definitely part of a program that reduces the likelihood of a bipolar disorder episode. These are my references, and this is a way to reach me. There's a cover of my book that is available on Amazon or from the new Harbinger publisher website. There's my website on that little green strip there, ruthcwhite.com. If you want the tools from the book, they are on the new Harbinger website. You have to register to get them, but they're there so that you can download them, and they're easier to use than photocopying the ones that are in the book. But the ones that are in the book are available online, and what you see online is available in the book. My Twitter handle is Ruth C. White, and my email is ruthcwhite@gmail.com. And that's my presentation for now. And I hope that it was really helpful to listeners and to all of you in thinking about how you can go about reducing the likelihood of a bipolar episode, shortening that episode if it does happen, and also reducing the intensity of the episode. So the point is to really prevent the episode in the first place, but we know that sometimes we're not fully in control of that. But you want to be doing everything that you can to prevent a bipolar episode, so that when it does happen, you can know that you did your best effort, and it helps your medications work better, helps you have less medications, less pill burden, make you more likely to follow whatever your medication regimen is. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm open for questions.
Great. Thank you, Dr. White. We appreciate that information that you've just shared with us on your SNAP program. There are a few questions. I will start with, Again, thanking this person, thanking you for the very informative presentation. And with respect to sleep, lithium makes you get up many times during the night. How does
Yes.
one counter this, and what is the effect
Ah,
on mood?
I was on lithium for I think 12, 13 years, so I absolutely know what the challenges are because it's a diuretic and it makes you have to get up and pee. So what I have, what I eventually started to do is as part of my bedtime routine, have it taking my meds with a long glass of water or whatever it is that I wanted to drink that time, chamomile tea or something that's calming. We'll take it an hour before bedtime and try to avoid drinking a lot right before bed. Um, because what you don't want to do is having to get up, several times in the night. It might mean that you wake up with a really dry mouth in the morning, but often people are also on sleep medication. So if you can keep um, not drinking, and the temptation is to, go back a lot. And what I also try to force myself to do is to sip. And so the less fluids that go in before you go to bed at night, the fewer the times you have to get up. I won't say it will stop you from having to get up at all. And some nights it can be very frustrating because if you do wake up, then you also realize that you're thirsty and then you drink some more, which means that then in another 2 hours you're going to be up. So it's really about minimizing the amount of fluids you take in right before you go to sleep. So keep hydrated during the day so that your organs are functioning well and you're, not lithium is a very heavy metal, and that's why people have to get their organ functioning monitored every 3 months. So you really want to keep hydrated, but at night you want to regulate how much fluids you take in. I won't say you won't get up, but if you sip and if you take that fluids in as part of your routine at night at a very specific time, then when you are ready to sleep, you'll fall asleep a little bit of thirst. You will wake up, but when you wake up, you can drink as much as you want.
Great, thank you. Next question. What can be done to reduce manic or hyperstate before sleep?
Ah, so I would say that, I actually have that tagged in my book about how do you, beat that insomnia. And I say one of the things that actually helps with the restful sleep is exercise. So, if people exercise in the morning, it's been found scientifically that you're more likely to sleep at night. For people with bipolar disorder, you don't want to be exercising after work because you're then creating a state of excitement, which makes it harder for you to calm down. So again, you don't want to take caffeine. You might want to drink herbal teas, for example, that are known to calm. I say put a drop of lavender on your pillow. This is another natural way of inducing sleep and maintaining sleep. Lavender makes us sleepy, and now it's funny they've including it in a lot of baby products for like baths and stuff. Johnson and Johnson have lavender um, in their products. Again, whatever it is that relaxes you, whether you don't want to do things like pay bills or problem solve before bed. You don't want to play competitive games. You want to keep you want to maybe dim your lights so that your body starts to do what it naturally will do when there's darkness, which is produce more melatonin for you to sleep. I also say if you eat late at night, and people know this, whether or not you have bipolar disorder, the later you eat, the more likely you are to be awake or wake up at night because your body then has to work to digest. So you want to eat earlier in the evening, say between 6 and 8, and so you have a couple of hours for your body to digest dinner so that you're not in that state. So, and I think for a lot of people, a little bit of meditation, a little bit of yoga, a little bit of literally sitting still will put their body in a calmer state to relax before going to bed. And also having a comfortable bed, is really important. And one thing that I suggest in my book is to write away your worries. So if you're thinking a lot, just have a journal where you're putting your worries, you're dumping them somewhere. And a lot of people have found that therapeutic in calming themselves before bedtime.
Thank you very much. Next question. I am always irritable, and I have mixed bipolar. All medicines don't decrease my irritability. What can I do? Do you have any suggestions?
Yes, I call it taking the edge off. I happen to also have mixed episodes and I have rapid cycling as well. So for me, my daughter will often say, Mom, you need to go take the edge off. And for me, what I've done is I build in walks. So I keep a pair of sneakers in my car. And it literally means that sometimes I just pull over on the road. And even if I'm just stressing out in the car, and I'll find a path, I'll walk for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or just taking breaks. When I used to be um, in the classroom, I teach online now, but when I was in the classroom, sometimes after class, I would just be so cranky, or even if I'm not in class, I just got irritable. If I got irritable, I would find one of the things that for me relaxes me is literally to go to thrift stores, because one of the things that happens for a lot of people in a hypomanic state is, or when they get irritable, is they find things to do to calm them. And for me, I didn't want to shop myself to being broke. So I just go to thrift stores, and it's mind numbing, and it just gets rid of the edge. But for me, exercise is the way for me to reduce irritability. It literally, like, I'm out in nature, I go for this walk, and I come back and I find that I might not be perfectly calm, but that sort of edgy feeling is gone. And for other people that I know, yoga works really well for them. They get themselves in a yoga pose and it just centers them and calms them. So I say try a lot of different strategies that involve your body, because your body is the one that has this energy. It's coming from your brain, but you're feeling it physically. And so if you can calm your body down, you can calm your brain down as well. Or you might find calming your brain down by doing something like knitting or crocheting or playing Sudoku or whatever it is that gets you distracted enough from the noise in your head, is what I call it. I hope that helps. But it is a very challenging problem, that irritability that comes along. For some people, they have it with both depression and mania. And so, for some people, it's just there all the time. And mixed episodes can last a while. So I totally empathize with the struggle that you're going through.
Thank you. The next question, do you have any suggestions related to the use of inositol, choline, and or whey protein isolate to aid in sleep?
You know what? I don't. And I've come across some of the studies, but they were either too small, or I just couldn't really get exactly what it is that they do. So I don't have, I, on that question, I really don't have an answer. It's not something that I have found in the research as something that is consistent in the way it works. But I am definitely, as you speak, writing it down for consideration in my research in the future. But yeah, I don't. I'm sorry.
Okay, next question. I sleep well consistently about 8 hours every night, but I do wake during the night once or twice, almost always, but always go right back to sleep. Does this mean I am not getting good sleep?
Well, I would say, again, because everybody has different sleep habits, and for some people, that waking period is interfering with sleep, but the goal of sleep is to rejuvenate. And so if in the morning you are feeling rested, then you're getting the sleep you need. If you're not feeling rested in the morning, then you might want to look at talking to your medical provider about the fact that you are waking in the middle of the night and how to reduce that symptom, because if you're not feeling rested in the morning, this can trigger either a manic or a depressive episode, or at the very least, just make you, like I said, the side effects of not having enough sleep, make you less responsive cognitively, makes your body more tired, makes you more likely to make mistakes. So if you are waking in the middle of the night, but you're feeling rested in the morning, then that's just your pattern. But if it's impacting how you feel in the morning, then I would talk with your health provider, whatever healthcare system that you use, and talk to them about that particular issue with your sleep.
Excellent, thank you. I was diagnosed with bipolar at 16. I'm very successful, have my MBA and my own business. My question is about impulse control. Is this related to the ups, or is this inherent when you're stable? I'm working on a plan to be stable and looking for tips to help. Thank you.
Okay, could you start the first part? So okay, so it's about the impulse control.
Yes.
Again, these are some of the challenges that people with bipolar disorder have to live with. And I know for me, one of the things that I do impulsively and compulsively is write as I don't know, it's called hypergraphia, and I've actually written about it on my blog. There's not much research in the literature about it, but there are ways, again, it's sort of the same ways as taking the edge off. If you can find something that you can do at that in that impulse state that is not harmful to you, whether it's, for some people it's I'm going to clean, so their impulse is to do something else, or they have to move or whatever. And so everybody has different impulse issues. For some people shop, some people use drugs, some people use alcohol, some people take risks that are not necessarily the safest or healthiest risks to take. So it's a matter of finding what is the impulse to do. Like, what is it that you're feeling that you have to do? If it's something that is not going to hurt you, do it. If it's something that's going to get in the way of your health, then you might want to find another way of controlling that impulse, or not even controlling it, but finding another outlet for that impulse that is less problematic. As I said, for me, I shop at thrift stores, so if I'm spending $4, I feel like I'm shopping, but I'm not spending $400, but I still get the same sort of impulse issue to do that. When I write, it's the same thing. I have to control myself and say, you're going to go to bed, close the book, close the thing, you're going to turn it off, you're going to go to bed. I might sit there and think, oh, I still want to write, but it's a matter of over time being really conscious of our behaviors. And you seem to be managing quite fine because, as you said, you have a successful career. So I think you do have your impulse under control to a certain degree. So it's just a matter of getting rid of the remainder that's left over. And sometimes we can't. Some symptoms we just have to live with, but learn to manage, and not necessarily for them to go away all the time, but just to make them less harmful to us and less intrusive to a healthy lifestyle.
Great, thank you. What is your take on melatonin? And if that is a positive, what is a good amount to take?
As to a good amount, I am not going to suggest what people should take, because I think that's a healthcare provider issue. Melatonin, some doctors will say that melatonin actually interacts with some of the medications that people who have bipolar disorder might be taking. So there's always this issue of interactions. But if that's not an issue, melatonin actually works for sleep. So some doctors will prescribe melatonin, literally prescribe in quotation marks, melatonin instead of, say, a Klonopin or Ambien or whatever sleep, medication that people might be taking. So melatonin does work because it's what is in your body. How much you should take and when you should take it is really a healthcare provider issue, because it's unique to each individual. It's like deciding, it's like me telling you how much lithium you should take. Some people take 300 milligrams and they're fine, and other people need 1,200 milligrams to function. And they might take 1,200 milligrams of lithium and then find they only need 300 milligrams of Seroquel if they replace one with the other. That's been my case, for example. I took a lot of one med just to change meds and take a lot less. So I wouldn't really want to talk about dosage. I think that's something you want to discuss with your healthcare provider based on whatever other medications you may be taking, or just your own healthcare profile. I always say you want to titrate up. You want to start with as low as you possibly can and then go up, but don't start with a lot. And that's just my approach to you know, the kinds of stuff we put in our bodies. You want to start with little and go up to what you find that you need, instead of taking a lot, just because we don't know what a lot of things do to our organ function.
Okay, great. Thank you. Last question. Any thoughts about Deplin as mood food?
What is that?
Let's see,
How do you spell it?
Deplin, Deplin
Oh,
as
I
mood
am not aware of Deplin. Um, that's another interesting one for me to look into. That is not one that I have heard of. And again, doesn't mean that it's not legitimate. What I did do is, you know, I searched the sort of standard scientific literature, because I wanted it to be based in sort of the most current science, and most accepted principles. And as I said, it doesn't delegitimize anything else that's out there, but I wanted to stick with what is sort of the tried and true. As I said, when I started taking omega-3s, people were sort of, they didn't really know if they worked or not. It was sort of seen as like a hippie thing to do. And turns out now, 10, 12, 15 years later, that, you know, everybody understands that omega-3s do work well on mood regulation, and even for people without bipolar disorder, it makes them feel good. So I have now written down Deplin as something else that I will look at, but I don't really know anything about it. I'm sorry.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. White, for sharing your expertise with us today. And just a reminder, if there are additional questions, you can contact Ruth at ruthcwhite at gmail.com. And also, this presentation has been recorded, or is being recorded, and will be posted on our website. So if you missed anything or would like to watch again, please feel free to do so. Thank you again.
And Debbie, I want to thank the International Bipolar Foundation for having me and giving me this opportunity to share what's in my latest book, Preventing Bipolar Relapse. And there are also, if people go to my website, I also wrote Bipolar 101, which is more of a sort of introductory overall book for people who have recently found out that they have bipolar disorder and want to just sort of find out more about it. And some of the strategies from that book are also actually repeated in this one, just because they're so effective. So I, again, thank you very much for this opportunity. I really enjoyed it. This is my first webinar, and it went great. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.